Yes, hi everyone. I'm Koen and I have a confession to make. Since already a lot of years, I'm more or less obsessed by the collaborative part of society and also especially by the collaborative part of innovation. So I would like to start this session by really linking into the last question of the previous session. What is missing in the lean startup approach to make it more successful and to make it more successful in solving wicked problems? And I think the answer that we have is collaboration. So I have about 20 minutes to convince all of you that the most important part of innovation in solving wicked problems is the collaborative part. So I have a nice formula here. I didn't invent it myself. It's invented by a couple of people in the US that say N is 1 and R is G. And those are two trends that, for me, push the need for collaborative innovation. So I would really like to dive in a while to see in how it works. The first one, N is 1, says the needs that companies and organizations face are more and more unique. It's not the simple thing of the previous part. The society is becoming more uncertain. You have the nice word VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. That's a trend that we often see. Everything is interconnected, and the figure on the right, maybe it's not so clear, is a nice indication of a wicked problem, a term that also came forward in a couple of sessions before. Wicked problems basically are problems that are indeed highly connected and everything is interrelated. But also an important part of it is that the goal or the solution of the problem is not clear yet. It's basically a moving target, and therefore it's also very difficult to understand how those problems could be solved. That's a trend that we clearly see. Organizations face it. Customers always want very specified solutions, very specified products. The mass market thinking slowly goes away. Linked to that is the second part of the formula, R is G. All the resources that you need are global. Global is maybe not the right word, but basically, if you want to solve wicked problems, if you want to be able to survive and have a sustainable business in this modern times, you really need to be able to quickly adapt your resources in an organization, and you also need a very wide array of resources. A while ago, or maybe a long time ago, in the Philips times, is what I always say, is that Philips had all the best things in life. They had the best engineers, the best innovators, the best product developers, everything. So Philips basically as one company was able to deliver state-of-the-art, highly innovative products. That reasoning does not work anymore. It's simply too costly to have all the resources you need or you might need in the future in your own company or in your own organization. So basically, the resources that you need for solving your own business strategy or delivering your own business strategy are spread all across the world in a literal way, but also in a figurative way of saying it. It's everywhere. So basically, those two trends, the needs become more and more unique and specialized, and the resources that you need to come up to deliver solutions for those needs are spread around globally. So my logic is, this all pushes us towards collaboration. If we look at a standard innovation funnel, you could say an innovation funnel is a pretty resource-hungry animal. In all the stages, you need specific resources, you need different people, you need different resources, you need material, and it takes a while to set up a funnel like that. And suddenly, if your requirements for innovation change, you should really reshuffle all your resources. So basically, it's a very difficult and costly thing to really push innovation funnels forward. The thing in the first stage, for example, is how you come up with new ideas. Where do you get the new insights? It's what they also call absorptive capacity of your company or your organization. How good is your organization at feeling what's happening around and sucking it in and processing it? It's all very difficult and it's all very costly. So, and the second part is, all organizations, everyone functions in an ecosystem anyway. Everything is interconnected, everything is linked to each other. It's a highly complex system. And a good example of that is for the supply chain. We see it in the economy these days, that global supply chains are struggling. Just-in-time thinking is a very good way of setting up supply chains, and it's a very good way of cutting out your costs of stuff that's stocked in a warehouse somewhere. But if those supply chains somehow get disrupted by ships that block important shipping channels, or by viruses that cause entire struggles to get truck drivers on the road, then you see that the systems are very fragile and everything is interconnected. I'm trying to buy a closet and it's simply not available. Companies try to ship cars and they don't have the chips for it. The entire network of supply chain totally crumbles based on a couple of events that happen, so everything is interconnected. If we see that it's happening that way, we are functioning in an ecosystem, we are functioning in a networked economy, then it makes a lot of sense to do it at least in a manageable way. You could just experience what's happening, or if you're a smart company or a smart manager, then you just make the choice, okay, let's try to control it in some way and let's try to push it in the direction we want. That's a bit the logic. And it doesn't happen by itself. We have a couple of examples here by collaborative innovation. It's about the technology transfer. How can you bring developments from a high-tech environment to another market? Two examples here are the Formula One developments. Engines from Formula One cars finally end up in normal cars. That doesn't happen by itself. It's not that the engine falls out of a Formula One car and by accident it falls into another car. You need to redevelop. You need to really push the technology to another part. It's a thing that takes a lot of effort. Second example of technology transfer is the thing that we do at Verhaert a lot for ESA, is take space technology and try to implement it in other domains. It requires a lot of effort, a lot of brokering, a lot of connections, and it's really a struggle to make that move. So it shows that on the one hand, it's important to do the collaboration in an intentional way and really try to manage it. And the second, it's important to really understand that it takes a lot of effort. So now we understand that it's relevant to collaborate and that we see that it makes sense to try to do it in a good way and try to more or less manage it. I would like to go through a couple of things that could help you to improve the way you collaborate in your organizations. Be it that you're the top manager or that you're somebody who's doing projects, it doesn't matter. Everybody, I think, can make improvements to do it in a better way. So the first logic is shrinking the core and expanding the periphery. Companies need to stop thinking they could do anything, so they could really need a conscious decision. They really need to make a conscious decision on what is our core business. What are we doing? What are we making ourselves? A couple of years ago, the logic was, do we make it or do we buy it? And then you had entirely make-buy decision frameworks and stuff. With the collaborative mindset linked to it, you have a third decision. You can make, you can buy, or you can ally. And it's really about how to decide what you make, what you buy, and when do you ally. And okay, you can have a lot of discussions, a lot of interesting sessions on making those decisions and really doing it in a sensible way. But the logic that companies could follow these days, and I think should follow, is that they really should shrink and try to push out other things that are not really linked to their core business. And if it's not really too strategic, then you can just source it in a buying decision. Or if you say, okay, it's still relevant, if we don't have it, then we struggle in our core operations, then you could also think of an ally strategy. Can we find allies in collaborating and by therefore create competitive advantage together? That's a first step that could actually work. Another one is the strength of weak ties. Again, an idea that I didn't invent it. It's invented by Granovetter already a long time ago. And his logic was the new ideas don't come from your direct network. If I'm sitting at home with my wife and my son, it doesn't take too much time, let's say a couple of weeks before more or less you know everything that you have to say and the new ideas don't come anymore. In a company, it's the same. They always say, After 6 months, you're part of the wallpaper. If you start in a new company, the fresh ideas that you have in the first weeks, they gradually slow down, and after 6 months, almost no new ideas come from a typical employee. So the logic is you need to source your new ideas and your new input, which is basically the seed of innovation, from the outside. It's in the weak ties. So really try to identify where are the weak ties, where are my connections outside of my organization, which are the networks that really don't belong to my home bubble, is what we could say. And that's the logic. A lot of research has been done on that, and it really shows that the really brand new ideas, the strong innovations always come from the outside. So your second degree network is what we could also call it, is an important source of ideas and information, and it's not something that just hangs around. It's something that you really need to look for and try to build bridges to. Connected to that is the entire building bridges logic. Find your structural holes in your network. A structural hole is a missing link between parts in your network that are relevant. And if you can find those missing links, and then you could do something and you could put something or somebody in that place to make the connection, then you really enable the use of your weak ties, of your second degree network. So an important one is really looking for the gaps in your network, and you could try to find interesting parts of an ecosystem that you would like to integrate with, try to find the hole that is there and try to build a bridge to fill that gap, and that way you could almost generate automatic inflow of new ideas. Another one is a very important one, and that's diversity. It's clearly shown that wicked problem solving and complex problem solving is best done in a networked setting. But an important aspect there is that you need diverse networks. It really doesn't help to build a network of the similar companies. Then you get no new insights, then you get no new inflow. So the key is in diversity. The key is in bringing together all very different aspects and all very different parties to the process. And by doing so, you make it more difficult, but you also generate a huge potential of problem solving and product development and opportunity creation. So an important one, if you're in an organization, is really to think of, is my setting diverse enough? What am I missing? And in a lot of situations, you see the typical thing that companies say, okay, I network, I go to the local Chamber of Commerce events, and I go to meetings, and I go to a dinner with my fellow manager, and we know each other, and that's the issue. It's always the same people, and it's always the same information, and after a while you're in some kind of networked groupthink. Again, no new ideas, so there goes the potential for real innovations. It's about the real new ideas that you need to come in. But linked to that one, you also need to be aware of too much differentiation. I had a picture here of a Russian farmer and an astronaut, and I'm pretty sure if you put them together in a room, they would struggle to innovate because their world is so far apart that it's so difficult to at least generate some communication and some interaction. It takes so much time. So differentiation is a very good and strong aspect of collaboration. But you need to understand that the more you differentiate, the more effort will need to go in integrating everything, and the more effort that needs to go in bringing everything together. So that's also one thing you need to accept. Integrating the effort in collaborative environments is a never-ending process. It's not something that you could do and then say, check, done, we can move forward. No, it will never stop. It's an ever ongoing thing. That's just part of how it works. Now my clicker. Yes, okay. Here it goes. Another one is that you really need to accept that there's a big difference between a hierarchical thinking and collaborative thinking. In a hierarchy, it's easy. You tell somebody to do, this is what you need to do, and this is when it needs to happen, and this is how it needs to happen. So you have the power and you can control people and you can control how it's happening. On the other side, if you go for a collaborative logic, if you go in a network and you collaborate with another organization, for example, the venture capital logic, big corporates collaborate with startups, you cannot command the other party. It's just not possible. They have their own free will, they're sovereign in their decision, they're totally independent. So if they don't like it, they can say, no, I don't think I'll do it. So you need to form decisions and you need to create action plans in a totally different logic. And that's something you have to take into account. And that's also something that people really do from a natural tendency. People are very used to the hierarchical control logic. In a network, you need to do it in a totally different way. So that's a very important one that needs to go in your mind if you really want to collaborate. If we look at collaborative environments, if we look at networks, if we look at simple one-on-one collaborative actions, it's very often that you see that both parties are in the trenches. Everybody is more or less in a deadlock of I don't trust you and I'm not giving away my resources because I don't trust you, and the other part also does it, so it's a total deadlock. People are in the trenches. So it's very important that you're able to keep out of the trenches and you keep an open collaborative approach. If you don't intend to open up, or if you have the logic of, well, let's see, first we'll see what the other one does and then maybe I will open up, then it's not going anywhere. You need to have some initial trust installed, and okay, you could make the trust a bit more stronger by contracts and stuff like that, but without the openness or the willingness to share and the reciprocity approach, collaborative settings don't get anywhere. So it's a very dangerous one. It's also a very easy one to recognize. I think it takes me 5 minutes to understand if a collaborative setting is totally in the trenches, and then it's also not so difficult to get them out, but you just need to recognize it and know how to turn around the situation. Then a very fun one. Collaborative actions and collaborative innovation, I think, is the best way to solve wicked and complex problems, but it's very effective, but it's totally inefficient. Do not think you could make an efficient collaborative environment. That's not happening. Collaboration is a mess. Collaboration is always difficult, is always a struggle, and it will always be. So just accept it, and that's part of the game. If you want to have an efficient logic, efficient thinking, then, my God, build a hierarchy. If you want to set up collaborative environments for efficiency, what often happens, I think the Belgian hospital networks is a perfect example. The underlying reasoning for those networks is cost cutting, and then that's not functioning. That's a very difficult one. You could start thinking of shared service thinking, like let's do the laundry together. Maybe that's a low-hanging fruit, but that's not solving complex problems. That's a totally different animal. So if you want to go for the complex problems and the wicked problems, then you think it's totally inefficient, but it will work. It is effective, absolutely. So basically, this was the formula. The needs are unique, and they will become even more unique and special and difficult and volatile in the future. And all the resources you need as an organization are spread anywhere. So the question is, does collaboration solve this problem? I think so. And then we could look at this one. Okay, everybody, I don't know how many people are listening, and I don't know how many people are looking at this presentation. I don't know who you are, but I'm pretty sure you're also functioning in a setting where you could really start thinking of your network and collaboration. So I have 3 things for you to think of. The first one is the diversity issue. Am I talking to enough diverse people? Am I working together with diversity? And yeah, what can I do to increase that diversity? Because in a lot of cases, diversity is the core issue. So really think of how can we involve other parties. Maybe you should actually involve customers. Maybe you should involve somebody who cycles by on the road and try to ask, what do you think? Create your diversity and push it forward. The second one is the boundary crossing employees. Those are the people that don't only work within your company boundaries, but often go in and out. It's what they call boundary crossers or boundary spanners, and it's a very, very important role in setting up your organizational collaborative approach. What can you do to give them more skills and to give them more ways of trying to figure out innovation and bring in new stuff? That's a very relevant one. And the last one I want to say is, don't just keep it as an ad hoc initiative. Build structural approaches, because that's the thing that drives quality. How can you build a structural approach on collaboration, on networking? There are a lot of options, and at Verhaert, and especially at the Open Lab, we are very happy to help you on that one. But it's by setting up structure that you drive quality. That's a bit the idea, and that was more or less my presentation. So we have some room for questions. Oh yes, a lot of questions apparently. Let's see. By shrinking the core, how can you retain appropriate know-how to collaborate? I think indeed the know-how to collaborate is very essential, and it is something that is left out of the employee development in a lot of cases. People in a company should really understand that they actually work in an ecosystem, that they have a role, that the company has a role in an ecosystem, and that the employees are the ones that make the connections. They are the ones that fill in the structural holes, and they are the ones that build the connection. So I think, yes, indeed, building up your skills in your employees and in your staff on collaboration and on really looking for ways to connect with other ecosystems is a very, very crucial one, and I think that's essential in setting up sustainable business. So that's something I would not outsource for sure. Good. Another one, any suggestion when a network link becomes a weak tie to ensure that it enables something truly new? I think a network connection, I think a network connection more or less can become a structural whole and become less functional as a tie. So it's about, a simple one is just to count. How many meetings do I have with a specific ecosystem? How many conversations do I have? And that's a simple one, a very simple one, and you could just count it. And if you see that in 1 year you have one, by coincidence, meeting with a specific ecosystem, then you have a weak connection to that ecosystem. It's by recurrently connecting and talking that you initiate the link and that you strengthen the information flow for that part. Yes. Question 3, how do you take into account the upward or downward dynamic that can arise in teams and can really make or break the success of collaborative intelligence? Ooh, I need to think on that one. An important one is that I think collaboration is the property of the entire team, and the thing you have in a team is that you could get benefits of actions without doing it, but shifting it to somebody else. That's more or less the free rider logic. You push away your responsibility because somebody else will do it anyway. And that's what you need to be careful for. And that's what you need to sense, I think. It's about the entire team, and everybody needs to more or less look at everybody. What you see in teams and in collaborative efforts that really breaks down very fast is a trust issue. And you need to be a bit sensible on wording that indicate lacks of trust or trust issues. But in my experience, if collaborative networks break down, the trust thing is the first signal. It's a lead indicator that you immediately see breaking down. And so if the first minute you see somebody or you hear somebody saying something like, yeah, they don't deliver what they don't do what they promised, then you really need to jump on it and take care of it, because that's the breakdown scenario. And if you don't stop it, then it's after 6 weeks, the entire effort of a lot of years lies somewhere down the drain. So the trust issue is a big one. Why is this step to go into collaboration mode often creating a lot of resistance? What can you advise here? Of course, it creates resistance because it's somebody people don't know. It's linked to the diversity issue. People have resistance against something that they don't know. So basically increasing your diversity makes it difficult for people. The thing then I would do is to build structures and to make sure that you can manage it, and then to assure people that you know what you're doing and you know where you're going and that it will all be okay. And then they will think they operate in a setting that is trustworthy, and then they could really push forward with innovative thinking. So as a manager of a company, make sure that you know what you're doing and that you communicate, that you also communicate about collaboration is a mess and it's not effective. So if you don't reach results very fast, that's no problem. We expected it. And approaching it from that way is reassuring people in collaborative teams. Okay, how do you align priorities and goal when collaborating in a network? I think in a textbook example, that would be linked to your core strategy. Every company should have a mission that makes sense and that's more than something on the toilet wall. Everybody should really live that mission. So in collaborative networks, for me, the mission and the strategy of a company is always the compass that you need. So that's the thing. As long as you don't deviate from your core mission, your core values, it's okay. If you start more or less deviating, then I think you're in the wrong direction and you need to correct in some way. Okay, so I see my time's up. I hope you had some fun and I convinced you in pushing for collaborative innovation.